Hey guys, this is a reaction video to Glynnis Breytenbach, who was interviewed here by Biz News about what would she do if she were to become a minister of justice. Let's listen in.
The future when I called you the Minister of Justice. So let's take that giant leap.
Unlikely.
If you were the Minister of Justice, what would your priorities be right now?
Well, my priorities right now would be to make sure that we restore the functionality of the criminal justice system. The entire system needs a serious overhaul, and that includes the police, the prosecution, the judiciary, and correctional services. So, the Minister of Justice is a very big job, make no mistake. Nobody should envy that job. It's a huge, huge job. It's a massive department with many responsibilities. So it's not an easy job, and that's why he has two deputies. But that being said, the department it's gone seriously backwards during the previous parliament, the fifth parliament, under Michael Masuta, and it's continued that slide under Ronald Lamola. He came into the job with a lot of promise. He's a youngster. He's an attorney. He's practiced as an attorney. Everyone, myself included, believed that he was going to really make a difference. He's a very nice, affable guy, but in fact, the department has deteriorated markedly under his stewardship, and the occurrences of the last sort of year have made it very clear that he's just not up to the job.
Okay.
So what I would do is I would make sure that the administration in the Department of Justice upped its game. At the moment, we have courts not sitting because the court machinery doesn't work, the recording machinery doesn't work because the contract has expired and nothing was put in its place. So and that's not the only example. There's terrible, contract management within the Department of Justice that needs to be fixed. The way the budget is spent concerns me. I don't always think that we get sufficient bang for our buck, so one would have to revisit how the budget is spent. There's a lot of dead wood in the department, and there's very little skill retention in the department. Many people now, for instance, in the legislative drafting unit are retiring and leaving, and that's a skill that's built up over 20 years. It's not a skill that you can learn in a day, and it's a matter of deep concern to me that our ability to produce quality legislation is going to diminish because I don't see skills being retained. I don't see sufficient mentorship, and I don't see anything being brought up the ranks to complement those people that are leaving. So those skills that are lost are of great concern. The way court interpreters are treated is a matter of grave concern. They're not treated professionally. There's very little training available for them. They're expected to do a big job. A court interpreter is expected to walk into court every morning and interpret that which is placed before the court. So murder, rape, commercial matters, motor vehicle theft, insurance matters, anything. They're expected to be able to deal with that, to have the kind of court vocabulary that can deal with no training. It's an impossibility, and so many court hours are lost because of the unavailability of a skilled interpreter for that particular thing. Also foreign language interpreters, and particularly South African Sign Language interpreters. So those things need to be addressed so that courts can sit. Courts at the moment are sitting for an hour and 10 minutes on average a day. Imagine you worked for an hour and 10 minutes a day, how well you'd be doing. So, courts should sit for between 4 and 6 hours a day. Those court hours have got to go up. There's very little discipline. I'm a great believer in discipline, and I would enforce discipline. People must arrive at work on time and work until they leave, not sit about doing nothing. So in the National Prosecutor, while it's independent of the Department of Justice, the department is in control of the budget of the NPA. Operationally, they're independent, but for many things they have to consult with the minister. I would demand that the National Prosecuting Authority ups its game. The court hours, again, are terrible. There's, in my view, a lack of discipline. Prosecutors need to be in court prosecuting, not sitting about. So those are the kinds of things that I would...
Your priorities.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that all prosecutors come to work and sit about. There are many, many prosecutors who work really, really hard every single day in terrible conditions. I mean, if you just take a wander around this country and pop into a court, you'll see how they look. Some of them are shocking. The facility, the public facilities, the toilet facilities are terrible. The floors are terrible. The wall, the lighting is falling apart. I mean, the courts are not properly maintained. That's an issue for public works. But I don't see the Minister of Justice, the current Minister of Justice, taking on the Minister of Public Works to insist that their buildings are properly maintained. The court roof in Potchefstroom, the magistrate, it just collapsed. Fortunately, no one was killed. But the roof just collapsed.
While they
were busy. And for months, the court sat on the pavement, under a tree, in the 21st century in South Africa. So, that type of thing needs to be attended. There's just, things are falling apart. The lift in the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein hasn't worked for years because the lift well is filled with water and nobody does anything about it. The roof leaks. The president of the Supreme Court of Appeal has to run around with a bucket trying to catch the water. It's nonsense. It's just, there's not enough attention to detail. There's no discipline.
That's a grim picture.
Wow. That indeed is a grim picture. It is quite shocking that we could claim that we have a minister because according to what Ms. Breytenbach just stated, it's clear that the minister is not doing anything. The question is, does the minister have a performance agreement? What is his service level agreement with the respective service providers that are supposed, for an example, to maintain the courts? You can't have ceilings falling apart and toilets being terrible. That is no state. I mean, if you look at the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, that is no state within which employees are supposed to do their job. And here you are talking about very senior officials like judges. And courts only sit for 1 hour, 10 minutes a day. That is not work at all. The question then is, why are these people being remunerated? This also explains why there is such a lengthy turnaround time when it comes to judgments in South Africa. You can easily wait for anything between 1 to 3 years, up to 4 years for a court case that is urgent and important to you as a citizen to be heard. Look at the Senzo Meyiwa trial that has been going on for how long now? It started and then they had to cancel it and they had to bring in a new judge. For me, it's akin to what she's just described is basically all hell has broken loose. Our worst nightmare has materialized. The Department of Justice has no minister. It is completely non-functional. You cannot have judges putting buckets so as to prevent water from coming into a court. Murder, commercial matters, rape, everything. Now this again filters through. If you look at the recent statistics that Cele had given of crime, this also explains then why South Africa has become a rape capital of the world. I mean, you're talking about 120 rapes in this country a day, 70 murders, 120 people being what we call raped every day. How is that acceptable? 70 people who did not plan, who were not sick, did not plan to die. Yeah, I'm saying that with a tongue in cheek. Who did not plan to die, lose their lives when they had left their homes or maybe even in their homes because of murder. This then explains why such can prevail, because there is no swift action being taken on the other side of the justice, wherein murderers, rapists, thieves, all these crimes that are being committed they are swiftly dealt with and sent away. Now, I'm not a Xi Jinping fan because I'm not a communist, and I think there's a lot of things that are being done wrong in China. But one thing I take my head off for Xi Jinping is this: if you rape somebody in China and you are found guilty, you get to be put away immediately for a very long time. If you kill somebody, you get killed. And South Africa has obviously taken this off the table years ago when they literally overexerted themselves, because they looked back on the history. They came to a conclusion that because during the struggle death penalty was used incorrectly, the state should not therefore use death penalty. That does not follow logically, because what does it do? Remember, when the state has the authority to hang or to inject a person, literally terminating their life for the crime that they have committed after they have been proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt, that's a deterrent. Make no mistake about it. That's a deterrent. Think about it. A 15-year-old, an 18-year-old being sent to jail for 20 years, and they came out into the community in what you call rehabilitation. How are they rehabilitated? They are worst off, because in the community wherein they are going to, one, they're not going to fit in that community. Two, there are no jobs in the market for such people. Three, organizations are allowed to blacklist such people. And that being the case, you are literally creating monsters who are going to come back and haunt society. Crime in South Africa is very high, all manner of crime. Now consider the fact that you have got no training for interpreters. I was listening to Senzo Meyiwa's trial recently. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, I was listening to an interpreter in court speaking on the case of the 8 guys that have been charged with assault, who are Paul Mashatile's security details. And I realized that we have a problem here, because the lady that was interpreting clearly lacks depth in her vocabulary, and you could see she's battling with the language that she's translating to, namely English. It's not a matter of an accent, no. It's a matter of not having the depth in her, what we call, arsenal to discharge her responsibilities in court, which is what she's talking to. And she clearly indicates that there's very little discipline. As a person who has used the court, our courts are not receptive at all, particularly to victims of rape. In fact, you kind of get the impression when you go to our courts that they think that they are doing you a favor. And I understand now, because they are, if the conditions of their work are not conducive to working, it's discouraging to anybody. I mean, you don't want, for an example, when I leave my house, I never really use public toilets, except there is a crisis, right? But I never really use public toilets. Now, just imagine now you're going to your office and the public toilets are in the terrible state in which Advocate Breytenbach just said that they are in. It's horrible. It's completely not acceptable. I mean, the court roof in Potchefstroom collapsed whilst they were having a session, right? And this is very strange, and this person is still a minister. There are roof leaks. Courts are only sitting for 1 hour, 10 minutes a day. The question is then, what is Zondo doing? Of course, it comes back to the minister, you see, because you can't have a scenario, justice delayed is justice denied. And in a country with such a high crime rate, this is completely unacceptable. And she says there's a lot of dead wood. You know what? I've listened to this entire interview, and because I obviously am a creator of content in YouTube, I'm not going to play the entire interview. I'll just put it on the description box for those who want to see it. However, when you listen to this interview, you kind of ask yourself a lot of questions. Why is it that people like Miss Breytenbach are not being utilized by this government? Why is it that people who are that experienced, who are that skilled, are not being utilized? I mean, if you look at the CV of Lamola. Lamola was born in 1983. I'm not an ageist because I know that paragraph 9, subparagraph 2 of the Constitution forbids that. So I know the law. I'm not an ageist. However, I'm a pragmatist. I'm a realist. He shouldn't be a minister. What business does he have with the least experience possible? What is Lamola's experience in law, for an example? Did you hear that Ms. Breytenbach talks about people, she says that there is no retention of skills. There is no plan to retain skills, and it takes, so meaning there is a brain drain taking place here, and it takes at least 20 years to have this type of experience to operate efficiently at a solid level. Now, what business do they have to bring a person like Lamola and make them a minister? This is where now I ask a question. If President Ramaphosa had an intention to destroy this country, what would he do differently than what he has done since he took over in 2018? What would he do differently? I fail completely to understand why people think that Ramaphosa is for South Africa. I know it may sound like a diversion, but it is not. We have an incompetent Lamola as a minister because of Ramaphosa. Remember the story of Thabo Bester. Remember how that Thabo Bester was seen in Sandton. And remember that they knew that the body that was burned in the cell was not Thabo Bester's body. If they didn't know, then Lamola shouldn't be a minister. It's just that simple, because all of these branches of law reports directly to him. He ought to have satisfied himself that that is Thabo Bester's what we call body that was bent there, through the necessary technology that should have been deployed to give that satisfaction. Even when it was reported that he has been seen, they took so long. You kind of ask yourself, what is it that we did before a thrice holy God to deserve to be given such incompetent misleaders to lead our country? I'm thankful that we have people like Miss Breytenbach in our country, and I still am hopeful that she could still be utilized. You know, when Madiba took over, now of course I criticize Madiba. If you listen to me as a person, you would know that. For an example, in one of the videos that I've done, is the nonsense of opening up statues all over. We are not idol worshippers, but I'm not there right now. The point is that I do give credit to where it's due. When Madiba took over, he came up with a government of national unity. But what is important for me, that many people have forgotten, is this. Madiba took Christos and made him the governor of Reserve Bank. He took many people from the Nationalist Party who had the competency to transfer the skill. Why? Because the government of the day would not have lasted had it not done that. We are having a crisis of Eskom because the people that made Eskom to be what it was in the year 2000, one of the best power suppliers in the whole world by 2001, those people were removed because, at the expense of what they call affirmative action quotas, namely employing people based on their skin color. How is that not racism reversed? When you are sick and you need a neurologist or you need a specialist, you don't need that person to be black. You need that person to be competent. Okay, now I've looked at Lamola's CV. What is available online is not impressive at all. I have no problem with him as a person, but I think he should have been an understudy of a person like Breytenbach for 2 terms. That is 10 solid years. And then thereafter, they could consider him if they wanted him to make a dent. Did you hear the information this woman gave from the time she was asked what is wrong? And as a person who's a South African, I can relate to this because I have used our courts and I've got what we call friends from South Africa who don't have a very good testimony of our courts. Lack of skill retention, lot of dead wood, and no training given to maintain the current skill, court interpreters not being trained, and court interpreters have to interpret for murder, for rape, for commercial matters, for everything under the sun. And we don't have foreign language interpreters. This is problematic, because then it means our machinery of justice will not work as intended. This then explains why justice is always delayed. Okay, guys, that is my rant on this one. That's my reaction on this one. I've listened to the whole video. It's very impressive. I can do a separate one, so that I'm running away from a strike where YouTube can end up removing the video. I don't like to, when I react to a video, to play the entire video, because it is important, according to what I've read on YouTube, it is important for me as a content creator, to speak more than the person from whom I've borrowed this video. So that will be my reaction for this. Tell me what you think. What are your views concerning what I've just shared right now? Do you think that it is important what skin color of a person that holds these positions? The ANC is failing simply because they are deploying people who are not only their cadres, but incompetent cadres. And they are focusing on the skin color. Because you did have competent people in the African National Congress once upon a time, like Trevor Manuel. You can't doubt that Trevor Manuel was competent. Well, maybe you can. I don't know what would be the reason for that. As far as I'm concerned, he was competent. People like Derek Anegom, under Mbeki, for an example, if you look at the cabinet, under Mandela, those were generals in their respective fields, and they were respected. I am not saying that they were always on top of their game, but they were respected by both black and white in the country. And that is important. Who respects Lamola as a minister of justice? I mean, think about it. He doesn't even look like a minister of justice. He doesn't have the aura required for the position. Nobody, I have never taken him seriously at all. This is not to discredit the individual. Okay? But nevertheless, tell me what you think about it. That's my lot. Ciao.